and where the needs are highest, and where the greatest impact of addressing climate change can happen. So let's now look forward to this year, next year, sorry. We still a few days to the new year. We pray to Almighty God to allow us to reach happiness and health. So next year, we hosted a climate summit last year here. It was the first inaugural climate summit. It was really celebrated. It was such a success. And the African heads of state and government have agreed that we do it every 2 years. So the next one is next year, 2025, and we are planning for that in earnest. We are planning to host the next Africa Climate Summit. At this stage, I am not in a position to say which African city is going to host, but Kenya is providing the secretariat for that summit. And if there is no other offer that comes, of course, Nairobi is a wonderful place for everybody in Africa and the world to come. And so that is what we are working on going forward. Next year also is a very important year on matters finance. There's a big international meeting called the Financing for Development, the fourth one, that's going to take place sometimes in June, and therefore we are preparing, because you cannot just talk climate finance in a place called COP only, because this is really our all interconnected issue in the whole world. So you cannot just discuss climate finance and wait for December or late November to go to Brazil and discuss it. It has to be discussed. So that is a big agenda that is coming up, and we're linking climate finance and financing for development, FFD it's called, that we are working on. As you are aware also, the G20 is currently next year going to be chaired by Africa. It's a great opportunity for us. South Africa is going to chair, and we're glad that the chair of the G20. You know, G20 is important with regard to climate because 80% of the global emissions come from those G20 countries. In fact, it's just 75%. And now, as you know, Africa has G20 plus one, so it's G21. So when you add 54 African countries to the G20, the total global emission is 80% of the total global emission comes from that. But Africa 54, when you add to the 75, we only increase the 75 by a mere 4. So really the 80% comes from G20. So it's important, and that's why the G20 meeting is such a critical issue. And we will be working from the climate perspective with the incoming G20 presidency, or to make sure that the African priorities are recognized and promoted. Two other issues that Kenya in particular is leading, and the Office of His Excellency President William Ruto is leading with regard to the financial reform, is the debt issue. We call it debt sustainability report. We have just we had an expert group that's working on that. We have an initial report, and we will be delivering that report to the boards of World Bank and IMF in meetings they call spring meetings that happens in April. And we want to influence the Bretton Woods institutions on the whole issue of debt sustainability for developing countries, and particularly for Africa. And then, as I said, we have a roadmap to achieve the aspirational $1.3 trillion, the decision from Baku, and we have a task force that our head of state, His Excellency the President, and a few other heads of state from Global North and Global South are also pushing on the the innovative financing ways. And so that is something that we also want to deliver next year, both at the Bretton Woods institution sessions in Washington, as well as the Berlin COP30 meeting. So a lot of work, and there is plenty to report on. And once again, let me emphasize, please, look at climate as a developmental issue, as health issue, as agriculture issue. Importantly, the financial situation of the global south is something that you really must pick on, the debt situation. And let's all be patriotic for our country, and let's remain positive, really, because I was in UNGA with His Excellency the President at the United Nations General Assembly, and the tweets that were going around that week when we were in New York, and it's such a shame, really. And I don't want to repeat them here, but you all know what kind of tweets are going on, and by who? By Kenyans themselves. I will encourage you, journalists, editors, really, it is our responsibility to build our country. There will be no miracles coming from anywhere. We can, of course, be supported with some loans and so forth, but ultimately, the challenge to improve ourselves as peoples, the challenge to build our country will only come from ourselves. And so by demeaning ourselves, we are only exposing ourselves. So you have a big responsibility as a journalist, and I encourage you, please report positively. We are open to provide information. Our offices are open. You can literally walk to our office. Bernard is here, Victoria is there. We are available to give you interviews, give you information that you need, but let's report positively about our country. There is so much innovation happening in Kenya. The Kenya Climate Change Innovation Center, KCCIC, the amount of work young persons in our country are doing, the work that carbon market startups in Kenya are doing. Everybody is looking at this country, to learn from this country. And so let's report all those positive things that are happening in our country. And just to conclude, just to assure you that on the specifics of training, on what COP is about and why we overextend and so on, why people walk 15 kilometers a day like Mr. Mwizi did, and why some rooms are closed, and why the stone-faced security agencies don't allow you to enter this room, we will provide an opportunity to provide good training for even a bigger number. And I think, Mr. Bernard, you can organize that sometimes early next year, and we provide good training on all the nitty-gritties about COPs in general, but of course climate COPs. With that, I thank you very much once again, and I'll be available for any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Asante sana, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your remarks. I will take just a few minutes before we go to the question and answer session to summarize what the envoy has told us is the Africa focus, not just the Kenyan focus, is the African focus. As you understand, Ambassador Ali also chairs the African group of negotiators. So when he speaks, he's not just speaking for Kenya, but for the African group as well. He's also indicated that the president is also chair of the Committee of African States. The president is also chair of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, which is abbreviated as CAHOST. And they have two major things that they are advocating for that could be of interest to us as journalists. The first one, of course, is the push for the agenda on constructively investing in Africa as far as climate change is concerned. Push for African investment, inflows of African investment into the continent. And then, of course, the other one is the issue of debt sustainability that we've spoken about for a very, very long time, and which forms part of the things that our journalism has focused on. Next year, on the road to Belém, those of us will be traveling to Brazil, the coastal city of Belém for COP30. The focus really is going to be on adaptation finance. There are quite a number of things. Of course, Baku was the finance COP. But the adaptation question is going to form the basis of a lot of things that we are going to be discussing next year. And I invite the journalists, the editors into the room to look at that road, how it looks like. There are quite a number of meetings that are lined up right from the start of the year. I know you understand that the AU summit is coming up in February, I think. Yeah, in February, the AU summit is coming. Then, of course, we have the AMSEN meetings that happens every year, which is attended by environment and climate ministers from across the continent, and which actually is the one that determines Africa's position in these things. So it's important that you understand, what is the AMSEN position, when is happening, what did they agree on, because that will build on Africa's position on the road to Belem. The Africa Climate Summit 2.0 is very, very big. If Nairobi gets to host it, it becomes even bigger. But the fact that Nairobi will lead in setting up the secretariat and organizing it, it doesn't matter which African city is going to host it. But obviously, if you remember, we had the Nairobi Declaration that built onto Africa's position as far as these investment inflows are concerned. Therefore, Africa Summit 2.0 is an opportunity again for us to advance or change the narrative on climate change. South Africa is chairing the G20. That obviously has implications on how the continent manages its posture on the global stage. And one of the things that I noticed in the agenda when South Africa presented its agenda was that they are going to be very, very heavy on adaptation, health, agriculture, all those things that are related to climate change. And therefore, it's an opportunity for us to interrogate what South Africa chairing the G20 means for the continent. There is the Bonn conference. I think it happens in June. I'm not sure. Yeah, the Bonn conference in June. It's also important, again, because that also, highlights what the rest of the year is going to look like, even before we travel to Brazil. And the World Bank spring meetings in Washington and the United Nations General Assembly in New York also offer us opportunities to just start measuring the temperature as how the world is thinking and where it's heading. And then, of course, preparations for Belem itself, which for a lot of people is going to be the turning point on how we advance the debate on adaptation. Thank you very much, Ambassador Ali, for your remarks. I would like to invite the CEO, Keg, and President to present this training manual that we developed to the ambassador, and to make a few remarks as to what these are and why they are important today.
Okay, thank you very much for your remarks, Ambassador. Where will they do it here? Right, so we have a training manual that actually emanated from conversations that we got at the Africa Climate Summit in 2023. And at that point, we mounted a training truck, a media truck, for journalists, and invited other CSOs to come and be part of a training truck within the summit. The summit was a first of its kind and happening in our backyard, so we took advantage of that. And we brought on board a capacity building segment, and what emerged was that there was need for further training, and not only further training, but more targeted, more targeted training. So that is how we came on board, and with the help of GIZ, developed, got a consultants, and brought on board a number of journalists, many of whom I see in the room, to deliberate on how we were going to put together a manual, so that we are happy that that's a milestone for us, really, so that climate change training is continuous, not just episodic. That's a new word. That's one of the new words that we need to go within our minds today. Let not our reporting be episodic. It's also a challenge for us as Kenya Editors Guild. Let's not our trainings be episodic. Let us be more intentional. And that is why we have that manual there. And I was having a conversation with Mr. Moneybags. He says that he would like to continue to train members of the press with this manual that members of the press originated. So that's really a plus for us. So that would be one of our takeaways. Yeah. All right. It's okay.
Picture.
Yes.
Pan Africa.
Mr. Moneybags. Okay, thank you. Minzy?
You want me to join?
Yes. Yeah, there are also two journalists who joined us. Yes. What we hope to do with this manual, there was Jawahir and there was Kaibere. Yeah, what we would like to do with this manual is to domicile in the institutions of higher learning. Therefore, we are already partnering with Daystar University, and we already did one masterclass. So we would like to continue with that. Thank you.
If I may add just one thing, see you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, and you know, you're all very young, most of our journalists, so that it doesn't make it, but you know, we are always pushing for live coverage of all events, all rooms, even the ones that please try and join. There's a lot of learning that takes place if you join live and you follow the events that are taking place. So I will encourage you to please join. It's free. You don't require any accreditation from anybody for you to access the live coverage of conferences or parties.
Thank you. All right.
All right.
Any questions?
Yeah, on that one, I think there might be one or two questions. I don't want to stand between you and your lunch. Are there any questions to Ambassador Ali or any of us? If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Make it short as we inch towards the end of the session. Where is the other microphone? Okay, yeah.
My question is to Ambassador Ali. My name is Helen Shikanda from Nation Media Group. You mentioned something about investments in renewable energy going down. Do we know why this happened specifically in Africa? And then the 2% investments that we have, who are the people behind it? Are they led by Africans, or is it people from the global north domiciled in Africa?
Good question.
Thank you. My name is Matilda. To Ambassador Ali, how do you address the contradiction of accepting climate loans that you actually widely mentioned, that deepens African debt, while also demanding reparation for climate loss and damage? And then to the editors in the room, any of you could respond to this. Do you think we are doing enough to hold governments accountable for climate pledges that they have historically remained unmade, or are we just going to let these political rhetorics go unchallenged? Thank you.
My question is to Bernard Momani.
Momani is not in the room.
Can I stay up? I was wondering whether we could include the topic of climate justice more in radio. I know Wajir Community Radio and Ghani Net Radio covers climate justice from time to time, but it needs to be brought to radios that us, the youth, listen to. like Capital FM, that we can know more about this and how to participate.
Is there any editor in the room who would like to answer that question so that Topista will answer the question on radio, inclusive, justice, and all that. Then there was a question on, there was another question to editors on whether we are doing enough. Yes. Which editor would like to tackle that as we move? Yes, Wanyama, you will tackle that. Okay, any other question? Yes.
My name is Kibaso George from People Daily. There's an issue that is a little bit turning into a political issue, but it's a science issue on the vaccination of cows. Maybe you can try and elaborate about this.
All right. One.
To any editors, are there any particular journalistic strategies that you would suggest for editors to adopt when reporting on climate crisis in marginalized communities?
O'Brien, you can take that.
James Wanzala from the Standard newspaper. My question goes to Dr. Mohammed. When COPs are coming, many journalists would like to attend, but they normally get issues of traveling due to the cost that is involved. Is there a way maybe the government would be planning with media houses when such a COPs are coming or such big events on climate are coming, and see how journalists can be helped to attend, because there are many who really would like to attend it, but due to challenges of media houses economically to support journalists to attend, you find that some of them may not even represent even one journalist to go due to cost issues. So my suggestion is I would appreciate if such an event is coming, maybe you can organize how you meet journalists from media houses, maybe if I can say mainstream media houses especially, and meet with them and see how we can work out this, because there are many who are willing to go, but due to financial issues, they are not able to go. Like the recent COP29, it's unfortunate to mention that for us as Standard Group, we were not able to take someone there in terms of TV for KTN, which is, I think it was not good. For a mainstream news room like that, or media house to lack a TV station to attend COP, it was not a good thing actually. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's have one last question from Topista here.
I was going to ask the question, but George actually brought it up because the issue of the vaccine was being discussed by Kenyans on social media, and the issue of the cow, my fat, my choice. And as much as it has been politicized, I think it's very important that we discuss it in reality, and therefore it brings the question of how the public on the issue of public awareness on vaccines. So the issue of the vaccines and the issue of methane.
All right, I think we can tackle those. You want to start?
Yes.
Do you want to? Yes,
Sorry,
yeah, asking that you stand here for the cameras.
So thank you very much for all those questions. Let me start with the easy ones, which is the easier one. Now, the colleague from Standard Media House, I think attendance of the COPs, whatever they are, it's really good. We have always been receiving the story. Our stories were being told by the people from the north, and it's really important for our story to be told by ourselves, and so our own journalists, our own editors, to attend these COPs and bring back the real stories as they see to our communities, instead of depending on international, developed country Western media houses. So we encourage as many of our journalists who are able to attend to attend. But of course, it's not cheap because they are held in different parts of the world. There is cost of travel, cost of participation and staying for a lengthy period of time in those expensive cities. And most times, the prices of accommodation and food and all that are usually hiked because of the demand, naturally. So it's usually very expensive. But it's not, of course, government sends government delegations, and we try to control and limit it because it's not cheap even for government to participate. And we will encourage you to work with your management to make sure that there are opportunities are given. There is no, I don't think there is possibility for government to send private entities to go and attend the COP, whether it is a media house or any other private. But what we can facilitate is the accreditation of the press people, the accreditation of people from the country who are not necessarily from government directly to attend. So that accreditation can be done by government, but in terms of meeting the cost of participation, it's not a government issue. The young journalist from Nation Media House, a very good question. Where does the investment come from? Investment comes from all over. Just who is available to invest in a particular issue. Oftentimes, as we all know, most of the global investments have been coming from countries that have capabilities, or not necessarily the country, but of the corporations, the individuals, and governments that have the possibilities of investing elsewhere. Investments also come from within. Of course, Kenyans are investing in their own country, but they are big investments which are very costly that ordinary Kenyan individuals and maybe even corporations may not be. You know that energy is not a cheap investment. For example, the initial capex, capital expenditure for energy is usually upwards of $50 million and thereabouts, so very expensive. So it is big corporations that usually are based in outside Africa that do the investments. But that does not preclude investments coming from within as well, and there are a lot of investments coming from within. And so the work that a number of our ministries responsible for investments, the Minister of Trade and Industry and Investment Committee, the Ministry of Finance or Treasury are doing is to enhance the enabling environment for investment flows to come to our country. But unfortunately, because of perceived risks in Africa, investments into our continent has been diminishing instead of increasing. And this is some of the challenges that our leadership in Kenya and in the whole of Africa are trying to overcome, and trying to say Africa is the best place to invest, the greatest opportunities, the best people, the youngest people, the most available resources and so forth. So that is our narrative. We have the best potential and our investments are safe in our country. But unfortunately, because of these perceived issues about our continent and about Africa, largely investments have been dwindling. And so that is a challenge that we have to. And yet we cannot address climate change without attracting the right investment. We cannot have resilience of our roads, our bridges, our houses and homes and so forth without getting the right investments, the right technologies and so forth. We cannot achieve 100% electrification of Africa without getting investment flows. But as I said, 47% decline is just a shame really for the world. Instead of investing in Africa, they're investing elsewhere. Contradictions between reparations and loans and so forth. My good sister, there is nothing, there's no free lunch. Please remove that from your minds. It is not possible to get freebies. Nothing comes for free. There must be something attached to it. And so the loans that we're asking as Africa, as Kenya, are concessional loans. Whilst loans coming to us are priced at 5 times the loans that developed countries are getting, this is the unfairness. So what we are pushing for is to have fairness in the system so that we can access at the same rate that you developed country or you upper middle income country are able to access. This is what Africa is pushing for. Africa is never asking for favors. Africa is not asking for free things. It is about the fairness of the system. So reparations, I mean, there are some, of course, there are responsibilities for the emissions and the whole issue of climate change. But we're not saying you must give us free things, but let's be fair, let's be equitable in the processes of addressing climate change. I think that is what we are saying. And please, just know that your development is yours, your own development. You need to develop yourself. You wait for manners from the sky. I think it will come maybe when the, let me leave it there. What was the other thing? Vaccinations. I don't want to go into political discussions about vaccinations. In my past life, I got first class in animal production, animal health in the university originally. So we've been vaccinating our livestock forever. Most of you will be young, but you know there are diseases that you must vaccinate against. Foot and mouth disease, you know, it is a common disease, and unless you vaccinate the animals, it affects all of our animals. The disease is called rinderpest, for example, that wipes out herds and herds, both wild and animals and domestic animals. Unless you vaccinate against those diseases, they wipe out. And it's not a new thing. I don't understand the politics of it, but vaccination, whether it's for human or for wildlife or for animals, I think it we've been doing. I have been vaccinated myself as a child. I have vaccinated all my children, and I'm sure all of you have been vaccinated. It's important that we adapt and accept the technologies that are available to improve our lives and livelihoods, whether it is for human beings or for animals. Thank you very much. And the other questions from
Santi San, you want to chime in before?
Yeah, so I just want to pick two areas, and both of them are controversial. I just want to mention something about the contradictions on the loans and provision of finance. It is a very emotive issue. Finance is really, really emotive. And it is emotive because of many reasons. Number one is that the Climate Change Convention, which is called the UNFCCC, is very clear that the money, the industrialized countries or rich countries, the 1992 conventions, which came out with the 3 conventions on biodiversity, and the UNFCCC and Climate Change Convention, they came up with the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and capabilities, which means it recognized the role of each party. And one of the key in the Climate Change Convention was that industrialized countries, that the rich countries, acknowledge their role in the unsustainable mode of production and consumption, which has brought us in where we are now, the climate crisis, pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And now, what is left? You see, when you take this glass, if we take it, it is full, and the atmospheric space. So the equator we're talking about, you fill this glass. So it is as they are filled and they have used their fair share of atmospheric space. What is left? No, I'm becoming scientific. What is left is just as more before the glass is filled. And so there if they want to use that, they can compensate us. And so there are three things which we fight for in we are going to, actually next year, we are going now to, we are working on a revised NDC, which is going to be deposited by next year, by February, if I'm not wrong. In fact, there was a consultation today on non-state actors. So, what this means is that rich countries have responsibility to support our NDCs in Kenya, to the tune which we said we want to reduce our emissions up to a particular level by 2030. And this money, 6 trillion Kenya shillings by 2030, is conditional on getting the money and them honoring the process. So it has never been said, and this should be public money. But now the language changing. Now that's where you are coming in. Whether this money, and that was a very controversial discussion, even when you see what was accepted in the 300 billion US dollars, it comes in various formation. Either it is loan, it is going to be either a concessional loan, it is going to come with the public money, grants. There are those who are talking about the private sector investment. So we have departed that. That is the biggest problem which we have, because now the North has run from their responsibility. They have caused a mess, and they have exhausted their fair share of atmospheric space, and then they want to transfer that burden of action to us. It's very unfair, it's unjust. That's actually the issue of climate justice. But who are we if those who are making the decisions at global level are the ones who are deciding? So you saw some even walked out because of these disagreements. So the issue, it is a very difficult question, and we as the civil society believe that it's very unfair for that now to use loans, overburden us. We are already heavily indebted. In Kenya, you know that is it 70 shillings, which we collect as our revenue. In 160 shillings goes to pay debts. So then, we want to use climate change adaptation, mitigation, and all this still to overburden us, as the ambassador was saying. That is going now to even put more pressure and put this burden, transfer this burden to us, future generations and children to come. It's unfair. I know it's very difficult for him as a negotiator, as a government official, to say that, but everyone really is frustrated, and that's why you see some people say, well, should we let this thing go, or should we sink all of us? Because it is as if we are begging. We don't beg, it is their responsibility.
All right, asante sana, Dr. Maina.
Finally,
Yes.
for the vaccine.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was reading, I know we are in a hurry, but Ambassador not talk, he's in government. But let me talk about it. The problem which we have, and it is not on that of this government, is that we have, yeah?
They're asking whether you can come here.
Yeah, let me come. So about this issue, actually the vaccine, I was reading yesterday a press release by Kenya Vaccine Association, and they were raising very fundamental issues here. And this actually goes to the government. The problem which we have, and somebody talks about fake news, misinformation, and disinformation. So we don't know who exactly is telling the truth between the government
and those who are opposing it. We are talking about awareness. This and the kind of the volatile, political situation we are in Kenya, you know about it. So even if somebody has a good idea, of course there are those who are opposing. You have sent somebody, these vaccines are carcinogenic or what, but who am I going to really trust? Because there is no information, and we are just getting it from political rallies. These are the challenges which we have. It may be a good idea, but the way it is being projected and marketed, then it gets resistance. So I have a cow. I have 6 bulls. I don't keep the dairy. I have 6 bulls. So I'm asking myself, suppose they are vaccinated and they become that carcinogenic, who will eat them? And they are going to be spoiled or to die. The other point is the greenhouse gas emissions. Somebody is talking about methane and what? Let us be very clear. Which is our priority in this country? Are we talking about mitigation, greenhouse emissions, methane, or we are talking about adaptation because it is our priority as a country? So is this a misplaced priority? That's what we ask. Should this money, which is going to be used in vaccination, go to the most important priority on helping my mother there and those pastoralist communities to adapt to the impacts of climate change? These are the things which we are asking, rather than really the misplaced priorities like this. We know my cow will not die even if it is not vaccinated. I know that. They have not died all that time. So what is the priority? Is it vaccinating them or giving that money to FLOCA so that it can increase the share to these counties which need that money? So that's my position. It is my personal position, but we are really worried. Let us create, if it is good, let us create awareness. Make people, sensitize the people so that they can understand the importance of it. That's all what we are saying. Thank you.
Asante sana. Asante sana. Daktari, as you say, sometimes a good idea might get lost in the noise if it's not communicated well. And remember, we asked today, everyone has an agenda. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, whose agenda are we parroting? Whose agenda are we communicating? Is this a good idea that is getting lost in the maze, in the noise? Is it a bad idea? Is it communication failure? Is it an advocacy failure? Is it a marketing failure? And what can we do to make it much, much more palatable? We had 3 questions. I asked, yes, Wanyama, you have the microphone?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. A good student of international relations would say our good ambassador was just being a very good ambassador at it. Yeah, he did one controversy. But as an advisor to the president, I would encourage you that please don't shy away from sharing the truth about it. Because from a poor village in Bungoma, I have 3, unlike Mithika was 5. I have 3, and I'm reluctant to do what? To vaccinate them. And in the event that the government is likely to make it forceful, it can easily turn out to be explosive and potentially a security issue. But besides that, there are 2 questions that were asked directed towards the journalists. One, issues climate, they are not only environmental, but I would term them as the sum total of a human life. And therefore, any media house worth the name, and I'm very sure the Kenya Editors Guild, where I am a senior member, very soon it will be rolling out a program to train those community radio stations. And apart from, of course, climate justice, we shall look, I'm very sure the training will encompass virtually all the subjects climate, so that those community radio stations, and even via social media, so that we enhance this knowledge. And then there was another question about, are editors prepared? Indeed, we're prepared, because initially, when you talked of climate change, many of us thought It is about floods, environment. But remember, we are talking about vaccination, and it's likely to have a climate change impact. So we've expanded our paradigm shift, that we're looking at it in totality. And apart from the Kenya Editors Guild, I'm very sure other stakeholders such as the Media Council of Kenya, the Kenya Union of Journalists are likely to join in so that we build capacities among our journalists, particularly those in rural areas. Otherwise, Ambassador, ambia prezo, hii si nzuri sana. And then, parting short, as we say, why would all this misinformation back and forth happen? Where is the Office of the Public Communication?
Yes.
Where is that office? Don't shy away from that. I'm very sure, Ambassador, if you told the President, listen, because we need to hear, it's the government spokesperson's office that is supposed to tell us. But otherwise, if you leave it to Onyongas and routers of this world, they are likely not to muzzle a very good idea. Now, ipake matope. Asante.
Asante sana. Krista?
I'll just stand here. Thank you very much, Jahir. Yeah, for the question on Jahir. Thank you. For the question about radio. Oh, okay. Thank you. You asked the question about the inclusion of young people through radio. And that is something that speaks very close to our heart as the Kenya Editors Guild. Our CEO, Rosalia, has had you because the issue of capacity building is key. One of the partners in the Kenya, the Kenya Media Sector Working Group is the ComNet. ComNet is an organization that brings together community stations. There's also another one called ACMO, operators of community radio operators. Those are also people that are targeted with this manual for inclusion during the trainings that will be given. So they are very much included in this, and thank you for raising that issue.
Lastly, Brian?
Thank you. I'm also as lost as many people in this room when it comes to that issue of vaccination. And I think I'm also a victim of what Mark Twain said once upon a time, that if you read the news, you become what? If you read the news, you become ill-informed. And if you don't read the news, you become uninformed. So I'm lost in there because, as Mithika said, I have some dairy cows, I have goats, I have sheep, I have all those domestic animals, and I also don't know. Do I allow the vaccinators to come in? Do I chase them? Do I open the door? What do I do? I'm also lost and I'm looking for the answer. Unfortunately, I don't know who I'm going to get it from. But now responding to what Jawahir, you should make it simpler, right? So I just want to respond to her question. And the question, I noted it down. The strategies that a media or editors can use. Let me put it here. What would you suggest for editors to adopt when reporting on the climate crisis in marginalized communities? And I want to respond to this question using the model of Aristotle back in 322 BC. And when he was discussing the concept of persuasion, and it came up with three ideas: the logos, the pathos, and the ethos. And I want to pick up on the issue of pathos. And he was saying that when you want to communicate to the hearts of the people, you embrace the concept of pathos. Pathos is communicating to your heart. And how do you communicate to the heart? It is communicating on the issues that you understand the best. Okay? And how do you do that on the issues of climate change and marginalized communities? And I always give a very good example. We keep on talking about the Mau Summit. It's called Mau Forest. The Mau Forest. And a lot of people do not understand the importance or the significance of Mau complex. But what about when you relate the story of Mau Forest with the drying rivers in Narok County? Okay? And how drying rivers in Narok County are likely to affect the communities, and especially women, that they have to walk for more miles to look for water, and they are likely to spend more hours looking for water, and in the process, they're likely to waste a lot of time, which they should have used that time to make meals for their families and so much. And by telling them that story using their local analogies, then you start to explain to them and to make them understand that the Mau Forest is not just a complex. It has a major and a deeper meaning to their livelihood. And so I would suggest, I would say that the best way is to talk to the hearts and the minds of the marginalized communities using examples that they understand during their day-to-day living.
Asante sana, O'Brien. Asante sana. Thank you very much for taking us down that philosophy route. I think it's been long. I think we were taught about ethos, pathos, and logos. I think in our first or second year of our undergrad. Just a reminder, just in case you forgot, ethos, pathos, logos. Ethos talks about ethics. You know, it's a matter of whether you're getting the audience to trust you. Then pathos is about, as he said, the heart, emotions. Is your message emotional enough to connect with the hearts of your audience? And then, of course, logos is from the word logic, getting your audiences to think. The question is, which one do you deploy and to what advantage? On that philosophical note, I don't want to keep standing between you and your lunch. You've been a wonderful, wonderful audience. I really, really appreciate the time you've given us, the attention, the interaction, the questions, and everything. I'd like to hand this over back to my friends to tell us where we go from here. Once again, asanteni sana.
Hey, that clap was very feeble, eh? Let's appreciate him better. Agnes, show them how to appreciate the whole session.
Let's do a factorial for everyone.
Yes.
So we do a 5 factorial. We are all aware of the 5 factorial. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. So 1, 2, 3, let's go.
Great, thanks, sir. We always learn something. That is also very mathematical. Eh? Thanks, we appreciate everyone. Mine is a very simple, a lot of consultation as well. Mine is very simple, just to appreciate all of you. And from the Kenya Editors Guild, we'd like to thank Dr. Ali for that very honest. And we now know that we have a scientist, a first-class scientist. We can all respond to when it comes to issues of science and math. I think my fat, my right, and everything else, we can discuss offline. The question of methane and other gases, we can discuss offline. Thank you very much for finding time to be with us this afternoon. We are truly, truly, truly honored. Dr. Nidhika, speaking your mind as you do, and doing the justice that we expect. Thank you for also finding time. I know you came from back when you had many other issues to do, but you've taken your time to be with us here. Joe has left because of the exigencies of duty, but we also appreciate that he took time to give us the perspective from the newsroom. And beyond that newsroom, also to know that besides being a manager, he's also a scientist and is a source for news. And you got a chance to interact with him. I saw some people taking his contact. some see in that cylindrical building, the double cylindrical building, and they can't get there, but they got in here today to talk. For the students, this was a chance for them to meet the minds. There's Mr. Moneybags has already left, but he has promised us money. Let's appreciate that that money is coming. Let's appreciate the money is coming. Because it's going to go to what we have all been talking about, capacity building, training, and taking. Madam CEO, I heard him say that we need to change. Instead of town halls, we call it village halls. That's where he wants us. He wants to take us to the villages instead of doing town halls. We accept, let him join us in it. Madam Zubeida has also left, our president. She rushed to do work for duty. So, Madam CEO, thanks for making this convening possible. The moderator, ever sharp, spot on, yes. And that knowledge. And I told him earlier that there's one thing about Bernard that I appreciate, that when called to duty, he will deliver. And he delivers with passion, gives it context. Bernard, that's a rare attribute in a world where everybody has a certain appropriation of rights. Minajua, you can't tell me. But it's easy to work with you. And Dr. Ali, you're privileged to have one of us. And you thank the guild for lending him to you. So we shall be flicking at small demand note. But you've already paid us today by being here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And then I want to appreciate the students who are here today. The students again can start to be appreciated. The students, na mwalimu wao asimame na yeye. Mwalimu Chebusiri simama tu. And mwalimu mwingine ni CEO. I had an interaction yesterday at the university. I've never had a more intimate, more discussion, a bigger discussion that touched all the three things that Aristotle was talking about. And this part of what we do as the Editors Guild, developing the next generation of journalists. I was very deliberate in inviting them, and I'm glad I did because they participated. And we are going to have this conversation of developing the next generation of what? Yesterday they were talking about the issue of what we called ageism. We have breached it today. They have come in, they have learned from the gray-haired guys and the bald-headed guys, and thank you very much. We appreciate you and be part of this conversation. The editors who came, I want to thank you all. The local media, I've seen the cameras have been rolled up, and the good thing is that I will not appear on camera because they have been rolled up because the key speakers have left. The international media from VOA, from KBC, KTN, and everybody else who came to give this story. And one thing that was a challenge today, how many of you are going to put this story tomorrow? Today, for tomorrow. Let's just be honest. Yes, let's just be honest, because we need to tell our stories. This has been a very, very intense discussion, and appreciate what we've done. So we appreciate all the people who came in. There are three people I want to recognize personally because they made their time. Andy Kagwa, thank you for the support from the Standard Group, and Andy Kagwa being a valuable member of the Editors Guild. I want to appreciate Mark Agutu. Mark, just let them see you. Thank you. That gentleman is a valued member of the Editors Guild, is an author, and he also sits in that critical house in the Senate. So when you have problems of going to the Senate, just talk to Mark. And at the door, there is also there is a guy we call SG. How many know the SG in town? It's called Eric Oduor. He talks about the bread and butter issues. Thanks, Eric, for being part of this conversation, because you are part of that, what we call the Kenya Media Working Sector Group that is now bringing all multi-stakeholders together to have this discussion. And finally, Odhiambo Lale, also a veteran and an author, also promoting a Gen Z in his house to be an author. Very, very good. Of course, I've recognized Mwalimu Wanyama. Thank you very much for giving us that. And everybody else. Let's say thank you and we welcome you, and let's speak climate change. It's no longer about floods. It is the totality, as Wanyama told us, it's about it. It's about the development. There's something, Dr. Ali, that we talk about. We've been talking about the growth, the GDPs. GDP is very average. It doesn't speak to the human being that we are talking about. There's a new paradigm talking about the Human Development Index. How do I transform at my level where I'm standing? And this is the story about climate change. How are we having this discussion, putting the person and seeing that today I'll be able to cross from Garissa to go to Moyale when my road is affected. That is my development. Thank you very much. And there's going to be lunch served. The Secretariat will give you, they'll give you a meal card as you go and enjoy lunch. And finally, Madam CEO, on your behalf and the Editors Guild, we want to wish you a very happy holiday. Stay safe. And those who enjoy Christmas, enjoy it. Those ones who don't enjoy it, cheer the ones who are enjoying.